Yo, what is good? It's your boy King Cobra here, and I'm about to do my Resident Evil tier list right here. I've been a big fan of Resident Evil my whole entire life. I started playing Resident Evil 1 back on PlayStation 1, the original PlayStation back in 1994. My uncle had bought the game and I played it, and man, I was scared, man. It was crazy, scary game. I remember as a kid, I think it was only like 10 years old, 9, 10 years old when I started playing Resident Evil. I started since the beginning. And I've always been a huge fan of Resident Evil. These games, whenever they come out, I always buy them. Um, so yeah, shout out to Capcom for making these amazing games. I love Resident Evil. It's one of my favorite games of all time. Favorite series for sure. All right, guys. This has been a long time coming. I've been wanting to make my Resident Evil game tier list. So here we go. Let's go, guys. All right, let's start with the original game, Resident Evil, that came out in 1994, 95. Back then, I started out, like I told you before, with my uncle. He bought this game, and when he went to sleep, I would go ahead and play it in the middle of the night, me and my friends, and we would be scared playing it. This game is really good. It's got a lot of puzzles. It's a really long game. It's got Claire, or sorry, not Claire. It's got Jill. The main protagonists are Jill and Chris, and it's pretty cool because you can choose between each character, Chris or Jill. This is the main two characters of the series. Starting out, it takes place in the Spencer Mansion, where you have to kind of go through and figure out the puzzles on how to escape. And then at the end, you kind of find out Wesker's been involved. So let me see. What would I rate this game? I would say the original game, it's good, but I mean, it's outdated. The graphics are pretty bad. That was pretty good graphics for its time back in 1994. Had good graphics. I would give this game, for gameplay, it was good. I'd give this game I'd say about a B. That's probably where I would list it. It's pretty good. Next up, Resident Evil 7. So, those of you who remember Resident Evil series after 5 and 6, it became more like action oriented with Resident Evil 5 and 6. And they were focusing less on the puzzles and the horror of Resident Evil 2 and 3, which I wasn't a big fan of. I don't like the whole like action button sequence, so you have to hit like action buttons really fast. I really like the puzzles and the horror of Resident Evil 2 and 3. I didn't really care for, I didn't like the new direction they were going, but Capcom took some time off and they got back to their horror elements in Resident Evil 7. They returned back to their original formula, which was they were known for, which was amazing. So Resident Evil 7, I played this game, man, it was scary. I even played it in VR. It was crazy. I was so scared, especially that part where Mia jumps at you with a knife. Man, play that in VR, you'll be peeing your pants. It's pretty scary. Resident Evil 7, the story is a new story. Ethan Winters, he's a new protagonist. They kind of went away from Claire and Chris and Jill and Leon in this new series. I wasn't sure how everybody was going to like it. I wasn't sure how I was going to, gravitate towards Ethan and Mia's story. But I thought it was pretty good. It was well written. The game was really fun. The graphics were great. I'd say Resident Evil 7 saved Resident Evil because after 6, Resident Evil was in a bad place. A lot of fans were not happy with Resident Evil 6, and myself included. So I'd say Resident Evil 7 is an A ranking. It brought the series back to its original horror roots, which was amazing. All right, let's see. Next up, speaking of Resident Evil 6, oh my gosh, this game is terrible. Terrible. I would rank it. Let's see. First of all, Resident Evil 6 was not a good game. I did not like the action sequences where you have to push buttons all the time. There wasn't very many puzzles. I thought the story was particularly weak. It was boring and uninteresting. I didn't really like the game. I played it a few times. I could never really get into it. And so I'm going to rank this as an F for sure. It was not very good. Alright, next up we have Resident Evil 2, the original Resident Evil 2. I remember back in middle school, me and my friend Hector, his mom gave us like $10 and we went to Blockbuster, right? Blockbuster was open back in, that day in 1996. And we found Resident Evil 2 at Blockbuster, so we rented it. We took it home and we rented it, and I had a sleepover. We played all night. Man, it was incredible. This game the puzzles were amazing. I remember me and him being scared and trying to figure it out all night, all the puzzles. It was great because there was an A side for Leon, and then once you finish Leon's story, you go to Claire's story, which is great. And the B side was just amazing as A side. And I'd say Resident Evil 2 is probably my favorite game of all time, number one. The original Resident Evil 2. I would definitely rank this as S tier right here. Alright, let's start with Resident Evil 3. Resident Evil 3 takes place right after the events of it takes place concurrently with the events of Raccoon City, so you're basically going through Jill's point of view of the story versus Resident Evil 2 where you're going through Claire and Leon's version of the story. So Resident Evil 3 takes place actually during the same time as Resident Evil 2, but you're seeing it through Jill's perspective as she's in Raccoon City and she's trying to escape. And the Nemesis is coming after her. So, this game is incredibly great. I love it. The puzzles are amazing. The boss fights are amazing. The story is 5 stars. Perfect. I loved it. Resident Evil 3, the original, I will rank as S tier because it was amazing. Amazing, amazing story. However, next up we have Resident Evil 3, the remake. This game, the remake, I did not like this game, first of all. And let me explain why. This game is half of the game of the original game of Resident Evil 3. They cut out so many parts of the original game. And this game is so short that you'll be done with it in like 2 hours, 3 hours max. They cut out the whole clock tower area, which was a huge part of the original Resident Evil 3. They just cut way too much content, and the story wasn't that great. I wasn't particularly fond of the new story. The Nemesis, I really didn't like. I really didn't like how the Nemesis doesn't follow you around, and he's kind of like relegated to like quick time events. So he only comes out like during like certain sequences, like video cuts. He doesn't follow you around like Mr. X. He only comes out like predetermined cutscenes, which is pretty weak. If he would follow you around like Mr. X in the RE2 remake, man, that'd be incredible. But yeah, this game, it was super quick. I remember it releasing for like $60. And it honestly was not worth $60. It should have been like DLC or something because this game was incredibly short. And I will have to rank this game as a C tier game. I mean, it was still decent, but it was just so much of the story was missing from that game that I couldn't really enjoy it as much as I wanted to. Next up, we have Resident Evil 5. Resident Evil 5. That is a game that was where after Resident Evil 4, they kind of got into this action sequence. They wanted to focus more on action in the game. And they kind of got away from their horror elements of Resident Evil, which I wasn't particularly proud of and I didn't really enjoy. I mean, RE5 is a good game, don't get me wrong. I like how you can co-op with people. You can play with a friend or play with somebody online. That's pretty cool. But I didn't like the whole action style of play. I thought it was kind of weak, and I wasn't particularly fond of it. So, Resident Evil 5, I'm going to rank this as a... Man, I can't decide if I want B or C. Shoot. I'm going to rank this as a B ranking, because it was pretty good. It was okay. Next up, Resident Evil Umbrella Corps. Okay, so I played this game a few times, and it's kind of like what's that game? It's kind of like a SOCOM game. If you ever played SOCOM, it's kind of like a runner shooter. This is definitely not Resident Evil style. So I don't know why they particularly made this game. It's in my opinion, it's not very good. It's not very fun. It's very short, uneventful, boring, uninteresting. I didn't particularly like my experience with Resident Evil Umbrella Corps. It wasn't a very good game. Therefore, I have to rank this as an F. Not a good game. Next up, we have Resident Evil 4, the remake. Let's see, Resident Evil 4, the remake. I really, really, really enjoyed this game. It was incredible. I love the original Resident Evil 4. I had it back on the PS2 back in like 2002 when it came out. Incredible game, incredible game. I never thought that they could make the original game even better. That they could improve on the original game. I thought the original game was perfect, and Capcom did a bang-up job. It was perfect. The Resident Evil 4 looks even better. The gameplay is even better than the original. I don't know how they pulled that off, but it's simply an incredible game. In fact, I think it's nominated for Game of the Year. So definitely I'm going to rank Resident Evil 4 Remake as S tier for sure. Next up, we have Resident Evil Village. Resident Evil Village. That game was the second part of the Mia and Ethan series that takes place directly after Resident Evil 7. And I will tell you, I really enjoyed the story. I thought it was really good. I thought it was great story. I was really interested in getting to know these characters, Ethan and Mia. I really liked the boss and the characters, like Mother, what's her name? Gosh, I can't remember that lady's name, but she was the boss, the final boss of the game. She was really good. And then also, like, the other villains were good as well. That guy Heisenberg with the metal, he's pretty cool. I like that boss fight. That was pretty good. Oh yeah, Mother Miranda's her name. Yeah, she was pretty good. I liked her boss fight. That was fun. And Lady Dimitrescu, Lady D, she stole the show, man. Her part of the castle, I wish that would have been longer. That was really quick. And in my opinion, I wish she would have been the final villain. That would have been sick. She looked super cool, man. She was nice. And then so Resident Evil Village, I'm gonna rank that as A tier. It's really fun. It's really great. So definitely check that one out if you get a chance. Next up, Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City. Eesh, man, what can I say about this game that hasn't already been said? It was officially panned by a lot of reviewers. This game is not very good. It's similar to the Umbrella Corps style, where it's like run and gun. That's not what Resident Evil is known for. They're known more for horror, and this is really not their style of game that they like to make. So I didn't really enjoy this game. I'm going to rank this as an F. Alright, which brings us next up to the Outbreak games. So Resident Evil Outbreak, the first one was a really good game. I liked it. I did enjoy it. It took place in Raccoon City. There's a lot of characters in the game. It's fun exploring. I thought this was a really good game. I'm going to rank this as B tier. And Resident Evil Outbreak File 2, I thought was really great. They improved on a lot of things from Resident Evil Outbreak, the original, and they just made the game funner. and with more characters. So I'm going to rank that as A tier. Next up, we have Resident Evil 0. Resident Evil 0 takes place on a train. It's got Rebecca Chambers and Billy Powers, I believe his name. And so this game is really good. It's got some of the key Resident Evil horror aspects that I like. The only thing I didn't particularly enjoy about this game is I didn't like having to switch back to characters all the time. I thought that was kind of weird. And the puzzles were okay. They weren't that great. I would definitely rank Resident Evil 0 as B status, B tier. Because it was okay, but it wasn't the greatest. The graphics look really good, though, I must comment. Which brings us to the original Resident Evil remake. Original Resident Evil remake is good. I like the graphics. It looks really good. The gameplay is pretty fun. I like how they made the whole Lisa story kind of more involved in it. I would say it was really good. I definitely enjoyed it. And so I would rank this one as B tier. Probably ahead of the original right there. Let's say that. Alright. Next up we have the original Resident Evil 4. This game was a game breaker when it released back in 2002. It was incredible. Love the stories. I love Las Plagas. The bosses are great. Salvatore. What's that guy, the cult leader dude? Gosh, can't remember his name, but he's the final boss. He's great. He's a really good boss fight. I love this story. I love Leon saving Ashley and Ada coming at the end and helping. Puzzles were great. I just loved Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4 is the pinnacle of Resident Evil. It's what Resident Evil is. It's the formula of Resident Evil. It's just everything is perfect in this game. So this is an S. Resident Evil Code Veronica. Resident Evil Code Veronica is not very known well by a lot of people. Dislike Resident Evil Code Veronica. I loved it. I thought it was great. The story is amazing. The gameplay is really long. It's a really long game. It takes about 6-7 hours to complete. I really enjoyed the story, but a lot of people disliked this game. They weren't particularly fond of it. I enjoyed it. I loved it. In fact, I'm hoping they make the next remake of Resident Evil Code Veronica. That would be amazing. Instead of RE5. Resident Evil Code Veronica. Where would I rank it? This is a hard one. Man. I would rank this as A tier. Right under S tier. Because it could be S tier. If they remake it, do a couple changes, could be S tier for sure. Resident Evil 2 Remake. Last but not least. Incredible game. Same as RE4. They remade it to look amazing. It looks great. Just like the original game, but improved in every single way possible. Story is incredible. Graphics are incredible. Anything you could ever ask for as a Resident Evil fan, they improved and made it better than the original Resident Evil 2. And Resident Evil 2 was a masterpiece in itself. So, Resident Evil 2 I will rank as S tier. And I will update that. So, Resident Evil 2 original, I will say is S tier 1. Resident Evil 4 S tier 2. Resident Evil 2 Remake S tier 3. Resident Evil 4 S tier 4. And then last but not least, Resident Evil 3 on the S tier 5. So these are my rankings, guys. Let me know in the comments what your favorite Resident Evil game of all time is. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so we can keep the show going. And yeah, I look forward to posting more videos, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.